We are speaking with Nick Walsh from Famous Underground. Some of you older listeners might remember him from a Canadian band called Slik Toxic, as we say here in Montreal. Bonjour, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Thanks
Let's
for having me on the show, Mitch.
absolutely let's get into this because you are a Juno Award-winning artist for American fans. That's our version of the Grammys. But we have a new album, our new EP called "In My Reflection." Talk to me about, first of all, making an EP as opposed to a full album, and then let's get into the music on this one.
Okay, well, first off, we'd originally written and recorded 15 songs, and we were going to release it as a full-length record last year. And obviously, with the overshadowing of the pandemic, we felt that we were sort of going to have to go back to the drawing board as to when are we going to release this, how are we going to release this, and we decided to do it in a staggered sort of fashion. So as opposed to releasing 14, 15 songs to no fanfare of any kind, especially nowadays, with how fast we consume our music with the internet and everything, and with what was going on last year, we didn't want to just sort of be, brought out 2 weeks later, we have to write a new record because it's disappeared already and overshadowed by so many things. So the fact that we wanted to do it as a staggered release, we've got 5 songs on In My Reflection. We don't know if the second half is going to be called In My Reflection Part 2 or whatever, but we've got other songs lined up, pretty much ready to go as well, for a possible fall release or early 2022, depending on how things roll out, if you know what I mean, in
Right.
the fall. As well as I'm already working on new material again. So I always find myself in that little bit of a pitfall because I'm one of those types of people that really likes closure on things, Mitch. And to sort of move forward with the next sort of installment of Famous Underground or whatever project it is I am working on at the time, I sort of like to get things off of the back burner. So that's kind of where we are with this release.
Right, and I'm going to offer this as a second title. This one is In My Reflection. The next one should be called Reflected because you've already you've already had your reflections, right?
That's true. That's
See?
true.
Let me ask you about that. Not putting out 14 at once because John Five, and I'm sure you're aware of John Five, brilliant guitarist. His
Absolutely.
last release, he did a song a month for 10 months, and then at the end of it, he released the album. And I said to him, I said, John, what are you doing? And he said, well, I keep my music in the public eye for the entire year because every month on the
Right.
first, they get a new song and they think John Five. Is that sort of a smart way to do the business these days? Is drips and drabs just to keep your name out there in this world of Instagram and Twitter and
I
Facebook?
Mitch, I believe it is. And in fact, you're mentioning John Five, and that's a recent thing. But back in around 2015, I believe it was, Lori, who's my business partner and bass player in Famous Underground, we took a cue from something like that. And it was actually the Black Eyed Peas who did that first. And at Christmas time, they finally bundled it all together as an actual physical product you could buy, which was all their singles from the year. And we thought that was a great idea. And at that time, we had just recorded a cover. We did a mashup of Megadeth's Peace Sells, But Who's Buying with Bob Marley's Get Up, Stand Up. I know, where does that come from? It just happened.
Why not?
One of those things. But we did a cover of that and a song that's currently on our EP now called Corrupted. And we decided, okay, well, let's try something similar to that. And we coined it the Digital 45. And we released 2 songs at once. And then things got a little hectic as far as, working on music and with the core members of this band. I mean, we're all doing other things as well. So, we kind of put it on hiatus for a little bit. And then, as I said, we were, working on developing the full record, and this is where we are today. But I do think that is a very, very smart strategy in today's, like I said, fast food music consuming
It is.
market. You know,
It really is. Talk to me about, you've described Famous Underground as being your passion, your everything.
yeah.
Talk to me about that compared to Slik Toxic, because you had a brand. It was an established brand. You have a Juno. You have a fan base. You have a brand.
Yes.
Why not exploit it with 87 different members? I mean, why not? You could.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Again, I never say never to things, but for example, even the idea of a proper reunion is just an impossibility because some of the members of the band have gone to the wayside and just wouldn't be able to do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, lifestyles and crossroads change people, and I mean, you're a big Kiss fan, and you guys are always longing for Ace and Peter to be back in the band. But the realities of it are,
I just want Ace.
yeah, business is business, and growth is another. And some people, like for example, within my camp, just didn't change, whereas others had to grow up. Due to life circumstances, let's say. So to do a full-blown reunion is not a possibility. But to go out there and do something or some form of it at some point might be a possibility. I mean, realistically, I've been speaking with Universal Music, and I've said this in some of the press I've been doing lately, because they own the EMI catalog. We're looking to re-release or at least make available specifically digitally the Slik Toxic records. They haven't even been made available for whatever it's been now, 30 years. So there's a lot of people clamoring for it and asking for it. But this is something that I've been, doing and sort of since, like, Slik Toxic, honestly, was a long, long time ago.
Yeah,
And,
30 years.
and
Doing the Nasty was what, 92?
yeah, 92. So it's my history. I'm proud of my history, but history is what it is. Like, so.
Let me ask you this just real quick here, not to interrupt, but if I'm a 80s 90s fan and I love Slik Toxic and I bought Doing the Nasty and I don't know Famous Underground, in terms of musical style, am I going to like it? Am I going to be surprised? Am I going to go, oh my God, what's he doing now? Or is he going, oh man, the dude still got it? Like, how do the two bands compare musically?
Well, I would say that honestly, if you were a follower of the Slik Toxic catalog, Famous Underground is an extension of probably our second or our third release, really, but Irrelevant, which was our second record, which came out sort of mid 90s when music had swung, the pendulum had swung. All of us sort of quote unquote hair metal guys or street metal guys or sleaze metal guys or whatever you want to call us, we were sort of forced to sort of adapt to what the hell was going on around us, or it was kind of a sink or swim sort of thing, right? And you notice some of the bands changed their images. They went from wearing the bangles and hairspray to Doc Martens shorts and flannel shirts. I mean, that was just sort of, I guess, a natural progression of our environments. And musically, we were a little bit more angry, Slik Toxic, at that time. And the reason for that was because, we went from being record label darlings to sort of like last week's news. And when you're an artist and you're writing the music and you write what you know, if you're going to be real, you write what you know. And what we knew at that point was we were angry. We were feeling like the dog that was kicked to the curb.
Yeah.
And we're like, we just went gold and we got a Juno and we've toured all over North America and you've invested all this money as a major label in us. And that's all we are to you, when the label's trying to make us sound like Blind Melon, when we were more equated to a GNR or Skid Row or something like that. You're not going to get Blind Melon out of Slik Toxic.
Let me ask you this real quick. In terms of business lessons, because you win the Juno, and we've repeated it four times now, best rock album of the year, and then your Yesterday's News. Does that sort of wake you up and you go, oh, I heard about music business. I didn't realize this. Or were you like, well, how much of a learning curve or a learning lesson was that where you're today's hero and yesterday's trash?
Well, to be honest with you, in all our eyes, without being negative about that aspect of it, it was kind of more like, damn, if I was only born a few years earlier, you know what I mean? Sort of like, because it was like 87, like when I heard Guns N' Roses, that changed my outlook on music again. I mean, I grew up like you, a Kiss kid, Alice Cooper, you know, Aerosmith, Queen. And then in the 80s, when I got to like junior high and high school, I found sort of more my own music again. It was like the Iron Maidens, the Dios, the Priests, all that stuff. And then, you know, as time progressed and I finally got my opportunity, you know, the pendulum swung very quickly. So, you know, if we had we came out in 91, fall of 91, our record was actually finished for a full year before they put anything out. So it would have preceded certain records that were in the genre, like the Use Your Illusions records or Slave to the Grind, or, you know, it would have been out and possibly filled a void for the genre. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, while we're waiting for these records, because remember what it was like back then. I mean,
I do.
It was magazines that told us when our favorite new bands were going to be putting out a record and tour.
Gary Miller at Metal Edge.
Metal Edge.
God rest her soul, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I posted about that when it happened. But yeah, it's like those magazines sort of were the thing for everybody to get their information, and then we would line up at, you know, whatever record store was your favorite. I don't know what you had in Montreal, but A&A or
Discus, A&A, and Sam the Record Man.
Sam the Record Man. There you go. So we'd line up to get the new Dokken record or the new Queensryche record or whatever, and you know, quickly it changed. So to get back to your point, yeah, we didn't feel like, oh no, we're, you know, this is the dog eat dog world of the music industry, because, you know, the music industry can feed the public what they want as a trend or whatever, but it's really the fans that dictate what they want. And at that time, I guess that's what they wanted. They wanted some sort of change. Let's be honest, that the sort of hard rock, hair metal world was getting a little bit watered down.
It was completely stale, and it had nothing to do with Nirvana. It had to do with those fucking power ballads. It was Motley Crue power ballad, Def Leppard power ballad. And you're like, hey, you're rock bands. Try rocking. Please.
No, you're right. You're right. And if
crying, amazing. It's like, oh my God, stop.
Well, if you watched all the videos that were going on at the time, it was all that. There's the power ballad, and it's like the slow motion. Oh, this is just so hard. You know, give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, the first single was a power ballad. The second single was a power ballad. The third single was a power ballad, and it was just like, oh, for Christ's sakes! I'm watching the Power Hour, and it's an hour of power ballads. It's like, stop.
The Power Ballad Hour, right?
The Power Ballad Hour, yeah. And then people go, well, Nirvana killed it. It's like, no, rock fans wanted to rock, and they were getting "Don't Go Away" mad.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But you got to admit, like, for example, for us anyway, in Toronto, we had a pretty decent scene going on here.
Yeah.
We had some unsigned acts that were doing well, Slash Puppet and
I remember them.
Jack Damage and a few other local acts that didn't quite, they were on the fringe of getting that deal. But again, by the time it happened, it was like on to I Mother Earth and Our Lady Peace and, you know, the alternative world, whatever that means. You know, the word alternative was a genre. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, it's the alternative to what, right?
Yeah, no, it's those days. But you know what? Looking back on some of those 90 releases now, when you look back, for me, on Euphoria or Pure Instinct from The Score, they didn't register then, but now they're like, you know what? There was some pretty good stuff going on here. Slang was pretty decent. Since we're talking about Canadian scene, you were talking about the Toronto scene, let's get over to Moxie. Moxie is a famous Canadian band.
Yes.
Long history.
Yep.
Russ Dwarf of the Killer Dwarfs sang for them for a while, and I don't know if you came in right after him or
yes,
after.
I did. Yes, I did.
Talk to me about that, because you know you're known for that 80s 90s kind of style and 80s 90s kind of vocal, and now you're going back and doing these sort of 70s things. Is that a challenge for you? Is it easy? Is it just cool? Talk to me about doing the Moxie thing.
Well, the Moxie thing is a bit of a funny story, because I have two brothers that are 9 and 10 years older than me. And I remember always, you know, when they weren't home, I would pull out their records and play their records and stuff without them, you know, hopefully not catching me. But And I remember seeing Moxie's first record. It's the black cover. And I remember seeing that, and I never pulled it out. I never knew what they sounded like or anything. And then it just so happened that Russ was getting the Dwarves back together with Daryl and that. And Moxie had an opportunity to do a show. And originally it was supposed to be one show down at the docks in Toronto. And I was like, well, why don't you send me some of the music over? Let me check it out. And my wife and I were in my backyard hanging out, just having a cocktail on a Saturday afternoon. When I got the music, I put it on, and I was just dumbfounded as to how I could have missed this throughout my my broad musical history of a fan and a listener and all that, because it had elements of Led Zeppelin, it had elements of Aerosmith, had elements of AC/DC, and these are all things that like are in my blood. So I don't know how I missed it. I got back on the phone and said, yeah, I can do this. So I learned the stuff. About 2 weeks later. I think it was only a week of rehearsal, and we were at the show a week later. And after that, we had an opportunity to record a record. And as I said, Russ was unavailable. And Earl Johnson, who is Moxie, the lone standing member of Moxie, original member of Moxie, was chomping at the bit. So we took the opportunity to do a re-record of the sort of classics off their first 3 records, the ones that were huge in Texas. Remember the old, all these Canadian bands were huge in Texas? Well, it's true.
It's true. For some reason, Helix's #1 market is Texas. Go figure.
It's crazy. I went down there with Moxie the first time I went down there with Moxie, and it was like, why'd you even bring me? The audience is just singing all the songs anyway, word for word. Yeah. Like, this is insane. Then we do a meet and greet after, and Earl Johnson's being hailed in San Antonio as though he's Jimmy Page. It was
for some reason, San Antonio loves Canadian rock. Don't ask me why.
Yeah, but a good rock in town, and yeah, it was great. And I've also been singing with a company out of Toronto here called Classic Albums Live for about the last 5-6 years, which has helped keep me out in the public eye, playing big shows around North America, keeping the vocal chops up. But I get the opportunity to sing some of my childhood sort of soundtrack songs. Like I got to do A Night at the Opera by Queen. I toured that for a year. I do the Zeppelin stuff, which honestly in high school I was the guy picking on my friends who liked Zeppelin, saying that's your dad's music, you know what I mean? And now here I am, Zeppelin's probably one of my favorite bands. In fact, because I grew up a Kiss kid, and now I know all the Zeppelin stuff. It's like Paul Stanley totally idolized Robert Plant's vocals, like totally idolize it. All all that stuff, that's Robert Plant right there, So it's cool. I get to delve back into the history of the stuff that I liked and what made them who they were, so it's cool.
Since you're a Kiss kid and I'm a Kiss kid as well, do you have a favorite moment or what was your first show? I mean, I saw them in August of '79 for the Dynasty tour.
Yeah, I saw that. That was my first time.
Wow. In Toronto?
Yeah, Maple Leaf Gardens. I think it was like August the 18th or 3rd. I don't remember the date, but it was August of '79. I was 8. I'm born in 1970, and I'm a November baby. So I was 8 years old. I remember sitting in Maple Leaf Gardens, like my shirt off, swinging it around, just going nuts, singing every word. And my elder brothers and their girlfriends took me to this thing, and they were just laughing at their little brother going nuts, right? And the band that opened was New England. Do you remember that?
I remember New England, yeah. Hirsch Gardner.
Yeah, produced by what?
Paul Stanley.
Paul produced that record, and I mean, that's a good opportunity for a band, right? And then I never heard of them again, but yeah.
But you know what? They're still touring.
Keep asking me more Kiss childhood questions. Yeah, here we go. Well, obviously the Paul Lynde special was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I actually watched HR Puffin stuff as a kid, and the fact that Witchy Poo got to introduce them and all that, and Paul Lynde's thing, which I also watched Bewitched, and he was Uncle Arthur and all that stuff. So it all tied into like my childhood, like really big. My brother's waking me up on to watch Don Kirshner's rock concert or Midnight Special. Hey, Kiss is going to be on.
That's right. It was great, and of course, when the reunion tour swung by Toronto in '96, you must have gone.
Absolutely, I was there.
Now I see you're drinking out of a Blue Jays cup. As a Montrealer, how exciting was it to watch the Habs in the playoffs this season?
Well, I got to be honest with you. When they
Sorry.
were playing, no, 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 really. I'm just a fan of good sports. Okay.
I'm with you.
Obviously, I'm a supporter. I'm a big baseball fan. Although I'm Canadian, I'm a bigger baseball fan than I am a hockey fan. But I do watch hockey, and I'll probably get kicked in when I leave my house. Somebody will probably kick the crap out of me when I get around the corner. But the way the Leafs were playing against Montreal, they didn't deserve to win because Montreal had such a verve and a passion and hunger to win the games. And it seemed as though that the Leafs were kind of passive and possibly even, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble, self-entitled a bit.
They were a little bit arrogant. They got to 3-1 and they went, pfft,
That's what I'm saying. But then,
and
honestly, when your team got into the final, there was really no match.
there was no match. And they also had nothing left in the tank. They were
No.
just completely, I mean, they left it on the ground in Vegas, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But the Leafs, by the way, when you got to Game 7, I have never seen a worse Game 7 performance by any team. They just didn't show up. They were just like, fuck it, let Montreal win.
Yeah, but we were going for Montreal. Don't kid yourself. Although I'm a Toronto guy and I live in Toronto and everything, I mean, it's like the Blue Jays. Excuse me. There's no Montreal Expos in baseball anymore. There's no other Canadian team in the Major League of Baseball. So this is Canada's national team, right? So that's exactly how it was when Montreal went to the Stanley Cup. I mean,
Yep.
that was Canada's national, bring the cup home, you
Yep.
know?
We
So
got one game. We got 25% of the way there. Anyway, in my reflection, the new EP from Famous Underground, check it out. It's available everywhere. And on that, Nick, merci.
hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, Mitch. I hope to be on again.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.